Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this first in a three-part of a series on climate change, sponsored and initiated by the PAASE, or the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. We are pleased to begin this first in a series of three today, and particularly we are focused on policy, responses, impacts, and programs. So we have two honorable guest speakers on this climate change webinar series number one. And today I am pleased to say that this particular webinar focus on policy response, impacts, and programs will be led by and we will be honored to have two great resource speakers. The first speaker that we have is actually a very good friend who works with me with Galing Pook, and we will listen to her for 15 minutes, after which there will be a Q&A or an open forum of 5 minutes. And thereafter, we have the second speaker from the Climate Change Commission himself, the Deputy Executive Director, and he will likewise be having 15 minutes of lecture and then 5 minutes of Q&A, and we will wind up the webinar, the first in the webinar series of on climate change. So let me begin with our first topic on policy response, impacts, and programs. And I am very proud to introduce a friend, a colleague, and a long time, how shall I call it? Colleague
Collaborator.
and in the in the field of local governance, particularly where we
Partners
work
in
together,
crime.
partners in elevating our practice to a level that could be appreciated more universally and in the academe. I'm speaking of a professor of sociology at the Ateneo de Manila University, who is also a science research fellow at the Manila Observatory. She is Professor Emeritus and has been awarded the 2023 Manuel Luis Quezon Dangal ng Bayan Award. A leading sociologist in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia, our first speaker has served as president of the Asia Pacific Sociological Association and the International Sociological Association Clinical/Public Sociology Division. Our speaker is co-chair of the Climate Change Commission's National Panel of Technical Experts and lead author of the IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, 7th Assessment Report on Cities and Climate. She led the Coastal Cities at Risk project in 2017 and to champion transdisciplinary climate resilience work across government, academics, and civil society. She is widely recognized for the contributions to urban sustainability and social resilience, and is active in the Global Research Network on Climate, Cities, and Well-being. Additionally, our first speaker, is a colleague of mine, long-standing friend at the Galing Pook Foundation, which focuses on local government and local governance. Please let us welcome Dr. Emma E. Porio as our first speaker for today. Welcome, Dr. Emma. The floor is yours.
Can I can I share my screen? Okay, and I will, Can you Can you see my screen now? Hello? Can you
Yes, Doc.
see my screen?
Yes, Doc. Yes, Doc.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Edna, for that wonderfully generous introduction. It's good to work with people and share each other's commitments and visions for a better Philippines. Thank you, Edna. Good morning. It is my privilege to share with scientists and engineers our work at coastal cities at risk in the Philippines under the Office of the President, Ateneo de Manila University. SICAR-PH is a consortium of scientists, professionals, and practitioners from the Ateneo de Manila University, Manila Observatory, and our implementing partner, the National Resilience Council. Bridging science policy practice nexus in the Philippines, investing in climate and disaster resilience. It is this is our focus now. I really believe everything we do is an investment towards resilience. If you see on the left side, you will see there our resilience toolkit, the coastal, and then these coastal cities at risk, and then the link tree, car page wherein we have the master of risk and resilience. If you are interested, please scan the most bottom QR code. The twin crisis of our time, as the IPCC report said in 2022, increasing poverty levels, widening inequality, and creating new vulnerabilities. And I said, the twin crisis of our time, climate and social inequality, constitutes our fundamental challenge as scientists and professionals and engineers to bring our science and technology to bridge science, policy, practice nexus. If you look at this slide, you will see that the climate disaster related map of the world, you'll see that the Philippines has a big circle, black circle. So we top there. If you look at the World Risk Index for the past 3 years, from 2022 to 24, we top the World Risk Index. And people always say, oh, we're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But I would say, this is very instructive, this figure here. For 2029, you'll see that the Philippines is number 3 in the most highest exposed to climate disaster risk. Number 4, Japan. But in the second column, the top 15 countries with highest vulnerability worldwide, neither Philippines or Japan is there. But then when you look in the last column, the 15 countries with highest risk worldwide, I always tell my students, risk is a function of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability over capacity or resilience. So if you look at there, Philippines is still number 3 as the highest risk, but Japan is not there anymore. You will see that Japan has become number 17. So I always tell my students in MDRR, what makes a difference? It's our investment in reducing disaster risk vulnerability and building our adaptive capacities. So you will see that why we really think we have to invest. We have to invest in building our capacity through our science and technology and climate action on the ground. You will see the top 10 global risk by severity. Number 1 is our failure to act, or climate action failure. Number 2 is extreme weather. Number 3 is biodiversity loss. And number 4 and 5, social cohesion erosion and livelihood crisis. Okay? We have to bear this in mind in terms of our work. For the past 5 years, the top 5 countries in Southeast Asia were one of them in terms of generating regional greenhouse gas emissions. For the past 2 decades, also, Thus, disasters have doubled and intensifying damage and losses to our people. This call for a radical change in our perspectives and analysis in the ways we frame our problematic on climate, environment, economy, development, and social transformations. This radical call for perspectives is that we need to, in our work, in our analysis, in our science, we need to naturalize the social sciences. You'll have to locate our construction of social, political, economic relations within our natural ecosystems and the kinds of extraction and consumption we've been getting from natural ecosystems. Number two, we have to socialize and humanize the natural ecosystems in order that we can be problem focused, solutions driven, with a systems lens approach in our science and technology applications. You can see here, we are always a favorite in terms of extreme events, Yolanda and the like. So, development increases climate and disaster risk, as well as the impacts to already exposed and vulnerable communities, social and physical infrastructures, economy, livelihoods, damage and losses to lives and assets, and their search for better lives elsewhere. This one is a picture after Ondoy. We're in Laguna Lake. It's practically inundating every settlement there. I really think that our task is to focus on the intertwining effects of climate, environment, and social inequality, vulnerability, and building the capacity of people and communities to build towards community resilience. So I would say that here in this part two of my talk, I would like to focus on innovations for adaptive and transformative climate actions for resilience. We have to be proactive in our climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction and resilience of our people, cities, and communities. Our strategy really is to institutionalize vertically, horizontally, and intersectionally the resilience agenda through transformative action research, tools, partnerships, networks, and coalition at the local level, national, regional, and global levels. We also want we also want to bridge science policy practice nexus through transdisciplinary action research anchored on three principles. We should co-generate our knowledge with stakeholders. If we do that, we also co-create our capacities as scientists, professionals, and practitioners, leading to co-stewardship and co-ownership and co-benefits. Our theoretical, if you look at it, our theoretical lens for transformation in moving science to climate action is anchored on policies, practices, resource flows, and relationships and power dynamics and mindsets or habits. I always tell the mayors, what are the 6 conditions of system change? We cannot just change individually or family or community, but we have to change systems that really bring us to where we are about being highly vulnerable, highly exposed, and really, I always after every typhoons or every flooding, I always say we're like Sisyphus. Sisyphus, we push the rock up after the calamity, then the rock falls down after flooding and typhoons, and then we repeat. So I really think that we have to be proactive, we have to be adaptive and transformative in our actions. We also, I think, what we did in coastal cities at risk is that we insert science and technology into local development planning. And our goal is to produce an integrated climate disaster risk assessment, which becomes a basis for planning and action towards resilience, governance, and development. I think we really have to work together because I think we are not lacking in very good planning, but I think in my observations with the local government, we really are challenged in terms of putting our blueprint for planning and development into action. Action that is synergistic, convergent, and lead us to kind of pathways to resilience. I will share with you two kinds, what I'd say, incremental adaptation and transformative adaptation. So for example, in the Ateneo Innovation Center, we formulated science and technology formulations in partner communities. Number two, we also partnered with humanities and arts at Arete as a strategic pathway for risk and resilience communication. So all my conferences since 2018 is always associated with an exhibit because I find that people communicate or can understand better our science and technology. It's in illustrations, it's in drawings and the like. Okay. Number three, we have to mobilize gender for resilience. This one is an example with Iloilo City. And then also working with communities on community-based arts for resilience. But we really, I think, focus on what I call moving our science to anticipatory climate action that is transformative, contextually driven innovations for climate disaster resilience that really address the important levers of social relationships, power relations that center on the values of justice, equity, inclusion for human and non-humans. We invite you to be inspired, to act, to reimagine, to think and act for the greater good so we can change the scale and depth of adaptation and contextually driven innovations for transformative climate actions and just adaptation. So you can see here, I will not delve so much our innovations for transformative adaptation, producing actionable science for decision making, data sets and models, disaggregating resilience for programmatic implementation, creating public-private partnerships and people, transdisciplinarity. I will talk about that later, but you can see here, I've been working since 2018. CCARPH is consortium of resilient cities with Metro Manila and Metro Manila, Metro Naga, Metro Iloilo. You can see here, and recently we added Mandao here in the bottom line last year. You can see that we really provide or partner with the local CDRMO, planners, mayors on doing a risk profiling of their cities and look at where, who, and what are the sources of vulnerability, what kinds of investment you should do in order that we will reduce the vulnerable exposure of people in informal settlements to floods and other hazards. You can see here on the right picture, we were handing over our climate disaster resilient maps to Mayor Legacion and also to the Ateneo Dinaga president, which is our partner, and Local Resilience Council. On the bottom right, you can see our water security conference with Iloilo. This is our resilient hub design for next generation disaster centers. This is really the major work of Dr. Greg Tangonan and Dr. Fabian Dairit, Paul Kabakuman, Toto Mates, and the other team of scientists and engineers. We really think that I always tell people that my lesson in Odette, the richest province in the Philippines, after 3 days, there were three lines: energy lines, food lines, water lines. So we really have to prepare our people before the event that you have the water, you have food, and you have energy, because we're so dependent on electricity. So even water, you have to, I remember when I was studying resilience in Canada, and the professor was saying 4 components of resilience: rapidity of the system to respond, robustness of the system to respond, and then resourcefulness, and then redundancy. At the time, I never understood what redundancy is. But then when Odette struck Cebu City and the northern part of the province, where they were not so hardly hit, and their water system was gravity fed. So we saw in the TV, these people in the city were lining up for water and the like. So the principal of the school that I was supporting brought water to the city, and he was telling me, itong mga taga-syudad, mga akala nila mga gobyerno kami, hindi man lang sinasaulo yung mga containers namin. But anyway, it also tells you about the relationship of city folks to rural folks, wherein there's really no, shall we say, collaborative energies and impetus, okay? So we really believe that we have to prepare, adapt, and transform. And you can see here the pre-disaster, prevention and preparedness technologies, the response and the recovery planning. You can see here, I can share with you that this is the slide of Dr. Greg Tamonan, Joy Rocamora, Paul Cavacan, and the others. Okay, these all I use these slides during my presentation on the Verde Island in California Academy of Sciences. But in the right side, you can see the AIC deployment of solar power potable water system and the others. So this is our our partnership with the National Resilience Council. It's our implementing partner, but we're really active in Adopt a City. You can see that. Our work really with the resilience innovations and initiatives with the National Resilience Council is a complementation of leadership and governance and science and technology. So NRC and its resilience fellows supply the resilience leadership modules, organizing for resilience, coalition, workshop modules, practicum, and coaching, while the science and technology specialists from Ateneo de Manila and CICAR-PH, provides the climate and disaster risk assessment, deepening systems tools, and the others. This is the national resilience metrics that we have formulated 2016, 2017 with the Ambassador Rommel Foundation, the other partners of the National Resilience Council, the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council, and many other CSOs and civils. This, I don't know, if you see there, the primary condition should be a leadership and governance that is oriented towards resiliency with empowered stakeholders and having an integrated development planning and implementation and evaluation. The immediate outcomes, the 4 pillars of resilience, which I call human development, sustainable local economy, infrastructure, and environment sustainability, these are all based on the policies and programs of the government that the local government, national government is supposed to do. So resilience of health, education, and social protection is based on all the policies and procedures. So you can, we have a compendium of the whole policies and programs of the government that they are supposed. So all of these resilience matrix are based on all the policies and programs that the national and local government is supposed to. If we do the 4 pillars of resilience, human development, sustainable local economy, infrastructure, and environmental sustainability, it will lead to resilient LGUs, provinces, cities, and reduction of deaths and damages to properties, agriculture, and it will lead to development continuity. These are initiatives in Manila in terms of integrating SDGs into the local development planning. And I would always say to my partners that we have to work together. I always say to the scientists I was working with from 2018 to 2022 that To innovate is to collaborate, okay? But to collaborate is to navigate the intra and inter systems within. And I always say there is power in numbers. I always think that for us to make a difference, all of us must collaborate and work together. And I always tell the local governments and my partners, understanding that we should work on the Pareto principle. 20% input, 80% output. Para I told them, parang it's the other way around yata ngayon. We input 80% and then maybe you have 20% in output. So yun, kailangan ibahin talaga the way we work, and we are very conscious of our input and how it will impact on people on the ground and the bureaucracies and the like. This is, we think that, everyone must work together. This is our resilient community program in Muntinlupa. We did this in 2018 to 2022. And then, and what we call, how do you articulate and localize the whole of society approach? This is examples of our resilient LGU program in partner cities of Naga, Iloilo, and Metro Manila. This is the team that I've been working with in terms of science, technology, and our principal investigators, our pool of experts, our council of advisors, our international project advisors, and also our team, work package 1 in terms of producing the science and technology for application, and work package 3. This is our last major national conference on technologies for anticipatory action, innovations for climate and disaster resilience exhibit and conference. My message to all of you is that as science and tech leaders, innovators, professionals, policymakers, research scientists, and practitioners, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go together, if you want to go far and farther, go together. Thank you very much. I think I will end there.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emma Porio. I think that's a very holistic presentation on your efforts regarding climate change, policy, responses, and challenges. I'd like to acknowledge people coming in to listen to us. And I'd also like to say that we are live in the FB for this particular session. We don't have much time, but I think we should give way to one question which is thrown here from the floor. And this comes from, I'm looking at the question of Miss Dilao. Here, I can't find it now. Here is the question, Dr. Emma. Good morning,
Yeah.
ma'am. What success have you achieved implementing your programs in poor communities? May I also ask who sponsors the resources, especially the funds for the program?
Okay. Our Transit Action Research Program, we had actually Coastal Cities at Risk. It started in 2012 to 2015. And at that time, we were together with Lagos in Africa, Bangkok in Thailand, Vancouver in Canada, and Manila in the Philippines. And we're supported by a consortium of Canadian academic and IDRC mainly. But then in 2017, they came back to us and they said, "What did you do that you achieved so much with so little money?" And at that time, Secretary Tony was the executive director of Manila Observatory, I think from 2006 to 2014. At the time, she was on the way out, and we said, we leverage everything from our projects to Manila Observatory study. And so in a sense, the resources, so at that time, so So in 2017, IDRC came to me and said, and to Lloyd Saga was outgoing as Manila Observatory, and says, we'll give you more money because we like what you're doing. And that's why we had a funding from 2018 to 2022. But after 2022, sariling sikap na kami. We build basically, I always tell people, nothing is free in life. You either pay it with your money, with your body, energy, or your soul. Mamili lang kayo. Okay? And I think, so 2023 up to now, what I'm doing is institutionalizing my work. I mean, like, for example, Edna is familiar with me in terms of my inputs in Galing Po. How do you see empowerment and political, economic, and cultural empowerment and local government units? How do you see innovation and transformation in this effort? So, and other things. So, I also, the most recent, I'm also sitting in the, I think Attorney Cuenca is here, I'm the National Panel of Technical Experts. I'm also the most recent one that I've been accepted as the only one from the Philippines, and special assessment on climate change and cities and report. Because I am primarily an academic researcher. In fact, I told myself one time, ano ba talagang alam kong gawin? Ang ko lang gawin, magturo, mag-research, magsulat. Yun lang. So ako, I always say to people, focus on what you can do. So in regards to partnership with LGUs, in regards to partnership with local institutions like UPV, Ateneo Dinaga, Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Manila, what we, Ateneo de Manila and Manila Observatory, is capacitate those partners in terms that they will be able to translate their science and technology to work with people. So for example, in Muntinlupa, I work with the local government planning unit, and they have junior planners. So we got their poverty incidence profile, map it out with the local barangays, and then they have the barangay resilience scorecard. And then we say, okay, this is where you should invest. Make the education, health, and social protection committees work with the people. Make sure that the investments, what you're doing is bearing fruits for the people on the ground. So for example, I've been working with Buklod Tao, Canoli, and the others, and integrated community food program in Valenzuela. That's Disciplina Bignay, Disciplina Ogong. They are relocated in the Ondoy, Tolihan River. And the local government basically provided them the social housing as well as agricultural activities and programs. And I work with them. They come during my conferences. The most recent was our OB festival. That's another story I'll talk about. But really, I was telling them, and I was so happy with that OB festival. Quezon City University came with their engineers. They have can you imagine, they crafted an OB Halea machine. That's their engineers. I think that's an example of how you create technology applications that really work for the people. The ICFP women brought their seedlings and gave it to the participants. So I was telling them that this is an example of working together. We bring to the table our capacities and expertise and share and connect. And when we do work, we have to be conscious. Ano bang impact? Ano bang effect ang trabaho mo sa ibang initiatives? Okay? All right. I hope I have answered that,
Yeah.
Edna.
Okay, thank you very much for answering the question, Dr. Porio. I think I just have to read out the second question from the floor, but this partly has been answered by your response. Sociological and policy-oriented approaches to climate change, by and large, are strategic in nature, which are significant but takes time before their impacts are felt on the ground. Disasters due to climate change are very urgent and demands for tactical solutions that address in the short term these extreme events impacts. What seems to be lacking is tactical intervention activities. I would like to see more of these tactical solutions as we think of strategies that address climate change long term. Very quickly, Dr. Emma, as a response, or
Strategic. Okay, I
yeah.
want to emphasize strategic and practical. As I told one climate scientist, wala naman nakaintindi dyan sa mga models mo. Kailangan i-translate natin yung early warning system to the ground. Anong ibig sabihin? For example, in Odette, I asked the people there, bakit hindi kayo naghanda? Kasi ma'am, signal number 2 or 3 man lang and the sea. Sabi ko, but when it hit a hot city, and then it stayed there for 10 hours that there's so much damage. For me, I was asking a climate scientist, yes, warm waters power our typhoons. So para sa akin, I told this climate scientist, ang science ko tinamban. Okay, if the warm waters of the Pacific Ocean are powered by then when it hits a very hot city because sementado na tayo lahat, pinutol na tayo ng mga puno, green cover has been glowing, nature-based solutions is not going really much headway. Sabi ko, di simple, yung winds of Odette, typhoons, stayed 10 hours in the city. Sabi ng pamangkin ko, pabiyo-biyo. It cannot, it cannot live. So, for me, we really have to, when I say practical and strategic, the reason why I'm having exhibits, because madali makaintindi ang mga tao sa drawing. For example, we did a climate and disaster risk assessment training of MDRRMOs in Siargao. Sinabi namin, ano bang epekto ng sa tao niya? Ay nako, sabi nila, ginawa na namin, ma'am. But then when we ask them to contextualize, ano ba, saan ba ang damage, sinong nasalanta, anong ginawa, ganon. Hindi na nila magawa kasi they just paid consultants to make their climate disaster risk assessment. So kailangan, you work with the planners, we work with the managers, pagkaintindi, ano bang ibig sabihin itong risk profile na ito? Who is at risk? What is at risk? Why are they at risk? How do they become at risk? Okay? So it's really translating science and technology into actionable ways. That's why I said practical and strategic. And in fact, in my Master of Disaster Risk and Resilience, I tell people, if you have not done enter and transfer action research with scientists, policymakers, local, hindi mo yan maturo. You have to you have to walk the talk. Yun lang. Tapos na, Edna.
Okay, thank you very much for your response, Dr. Emma. I think we should wrap up the first speaker's portion and give way to our issuance of a certificate to our resource person. So with that, I'm sorry to cut short our Q&A portion. The certificate of appreciation is hereby presented to Dr. Emma E. Porio for being our speaker at the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, or PAASE, Climate Change Webinar Series, Leg 1 on Policy Responses, Impacts, and Programs, held today on May 30, 2025, presented this day, May 30, 2025, with our deepest gratitude, signed our President of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, Dr. Gladys Cherise J. Completo. So again,
thank you. Thank you very much, Edna.
Yeah, Dr. Emma, and we wish to you to be continuously connected to PAASE.
Yes,
Our seminar.
It will be my pleasure and privilege, Edna, to work with you guys.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you very much. as we segue now to our second resource person and expert, we have today Mr. Cuenca, the Deputy Executive Director of the Climate Change Commission, or the CCC, and concurrently heads the Climate Change Finance Systems and Services, or the CFSS, the operational and technical unit of the CCC that primarily deals with climate finance and foreign assisted program management system, the monitoring arm of CCC's foreign assisted project. Aside from heading the People's Survival Fund, or the PSF unit, and the climate finance related operations, he also speaks in various national and international fora that the CCC is asked to participate in. Mr. Cuenca is a lawyer by profession. His previous roles in government made him well versed in the corporate law and compliance, public-private partnerships, and procurement. He has substantial experience in relations and in investors relations and information, in policy work, national government liaison, and corporate and local governance. Our guest speaker for today, our second guest speaker, is Mr. Cuenca, who earned his Juris Doctor Law degree from the Ateneo de Manila University and holds a Master of Development Management from the Asian Institute of Management. Ladies and gentlemen, let us please welcome Attorney Rommel Antonio Cuenca. Sir.
Good morning, Dr. Cog. Good morning to the members of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. It's always difficult to follow after Dr. Emma Porio, certainly an esteemed scientist and academician and member, of course, and co-chair of our own National Panel of Technical Experts. Mahirap pa sumunod sa'yo, Dr. Emma, but it's good to see you kahit
Di
man lang
naman,
online.
galing mo.
Hindi naman po. Ito pa, not only am I following Dr. Porio, I'm speaking before real experts, scientists, academicians, and engineers. Ako naman, bureaucrat lamang at napag-utusan to present before you. And para naman i-humble brag yung pinagagawa ng gobyerno para naman maibsan yung problema natin sa nagbabagong klima. Be that as it may, on behalf of our Vice Chairperson and Executive Director, Secretary Robert E. A. Borge, the Climate Change Commission wishes to thank the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering for making us part of today's conversation and fireside chat. We're happy to be here, and we're happy to be able to share with you the policies, the action which the government is doing. And I'm happy that Dr. Porio is here because she actually referenced a lot of what we're doing in the work they do on the ground, the research they do, and the studies which they conduct. No? So let me start. I know I've only got a finite time, and I'll try to keep it within the time limit po. At para naman we'll also give way to questions later on. So perspectives on policy responses, impacts and programs on climate change. The Philippines, and I'm glad Dr. Porio also discussed this earlier, and she actually very nicely segregated what the risk is, what vulnerabilities are, what the exposure is, and importante dyan, underpinning everything is the adaptive capacity also, which is important. So studies have shown, and numerous studies, international also, has placed the Philippines as the most at-risk country with the highest disaster risks due to its exposure to multiple hazards and frequent and intense climate events. And this one, I'm referencing the 2024 World Risk Report. Over the past decade, the Philippines is hit by an average of 20 tropical cyclones a year. In October of 2024, 4 tropical cyclones formed simultaneously within 10 days, hit the country, making our people become more exhausted in living a life in the midst of a worsening climate crisis. Recently, in-person classes in different parts of the country were suspended and they shifted to alternative delivery modes due to the high heat index forecast by DOST PAASE, which ranged from 42 degrees Celsius to 51 degrees Celsius. And these are in the danger level, which can affect certainly the health and safety of learners and students. So the Philippines' vulnerability to climate change is more obvious than ever. It is clear that our lives, livelihoods, and collective future are on the line. Klarong-klaro po na buhay, kabuhayan, at kinabukasan nating lahat ang nakataya sa hamon ng nagbabagong klima. Also, over the past decade, the recorded loss and damage in the Philippines amounted to 673.3 billion pesos. It may seem like just a number, but if you equate it with something, and we've got three examples here in your screen, 673 billion equates to or equivalent to the annual earnings of 4.18 million Filipinos on minimum wage, or 66% of the government's education budget for 2025, or roughly equivalent to 1.2 million hospital beds, which could have been potentially used by sick and infirm Filipinos. To more comprehensively grasp the implications of climate change in the Philippines, climate trends, and extreme events that have had the most impact on the country were considered. And we were specifically concentrating on 4 climatic impact drivers, or CIDs. And these 4 are the most critical to the Philippines' vulnerability. First, increased temperatures and drought. Second, sea level rise and extreme sea levels. Third is extreme precipitation. And fourth, extreme wind and tropical cyclones. We have identified these climate impact drivers in consultation with our national climate experts, and that includes Dr. Porio, because she's a member of our national panel of technical experts, and our what we call the consultative group of experts when we were developing our national adaptation plan. So we'll go on to the we've established really how expensive it can be and what the effects on our economy and the lives of people. So we look at what policies has the government enacted or issued so that we can address what we have before us. So it starts with the enactment of Republic Act 9729, or the Climate Change Act of 2009. It was, of course, amended later on. This created the Climate Change Commission as the lead policy-making body of the government tasked to coordinate, monitor, and evaluate the plans of the government, ensuring the mainstreaming of climate change into national, sectoral, and local development plans and programs. The law also mandated the Commission to formulate what we call the National Framework Strategy on Climate Change, or NFSCC. The NFSCC serves as the country's roadmap to a climate-resilient Philippines. And this, in turn, produced what we call the National Climate Change Action Plan. And this naman is the operational plan of the National Strategy Framework. And the NCCAP, or the National Climate Change Action Plan, outlines the country's adaptation and mitigation strategies and measures for the period 2011 until 2028. Now, to ensure the effective implementation of the NFSCC and NCCAP, the law also defined the roles and functions of concerned government agencies. So it's not just the CCC is working on it. We've always said that it needs to be a whole of government whole of country, and we even say whole of world action that's needed, because climate change certainly does not respect any political boundaries. So, as a country that consistently ranks high in terms of climate change impacts and disaster risks, the Philippines recently completed its National Adaptation Plan 2023 to 2050. The NAP, as we call it, is both a document and a process. It aims to steadily reduce climate-related loss and damage and build the country's adaptive capacity towards transformative resilience and sustainable economic development by 2050. The NAP has been formally issued via a commission resolution, and it is a foundational document outlining the Philippines' roadmap to climate resilience with a fit for purpose interventions determined through comprehensive and science and evidence-based and beyond business as usual planning tools, taking into consideration projected risks and scenarios from top-of-class modeling technologies for up to 2050 and beyond. The National Adaptation Plan is anchored on risk management and the best available science and climate analytics, and it identifies 8 key adaptation priorities and strategies to serve as an insightful reference point to support decision-making on adaptation actions at a localized level. So, what you have here are the 8 key sectors identified, ranging from agriculture, fisheries, water, health, biodiversity, land use, and it even considers cultural heritage and even the effects on the population, including the need for people to move around because of the effects of climate change. Of course, obviously, energy, transport, and communications, as well as livelihoods and industries. Also, the NAP identifies the 18 provinces with high exposure areas, and this is based on provincial categories. It's listed in alphabetical order. I don't know if it's clear enough in your screen, but 18 provinces, Albay, Bulacan, range from eastern Albay down south to Zamboanga del Sur, Samar, Masbate, Leyte, Cebu even. Now, the categories, how the provinces are categorized is based on exposure score. No? Of course, if we set the holy grail is always to make it more localized even, and further data is also needed so that we can get more granularity on sectoral prioritization as well. So while adaptation priorities are outlined per sector, the NAP also recognizes the inextricable links between various sectors. It emphasizes the need for an integrated approach to adaptation, acknowledging that disruptions in any sector can trigger cascading impacts on other interrelated systems. The NAP, therefore, emphasizes the value of promoting a synergistic approach that maximizes co-benefits across the sectors. So cross sectors, we make sure there are 5 thematic cross-sector strategies, and to give you a window into each, for strengthening infrastructure resilience, the strategy focuses on reinforcing critical infrastructure across various sectors to withstand adverse effects and minimize service disruptions caused by climate change impacts. On the in safeguarding livelihoods, the strategy centers on actions and mechanisms that protect the livelihoods of populations from the impacts of climate change using social safety nets and climate-responsive regulations. To empower local governments, This strategy involves enabling local governments and communities to implement adaptation solutions by enhancing their understanding of adaptation and resilience and equipping them with access to climate data, resources, and tools. To mainstream governance, the strategy underscores the need for fostering coordinated collaboration among stakeholders, policymakers, and institutions across horizontal and vertical chains of command regarding adaptation priorities. And to scale up all of these, at least scale up nature-based solutions, the strategy emphasizes the importance of prioritizing nature-based solutions where possible to enhance climate resilience and protect vulnerable populations. The next critical step, of course, in the NAP is the localization of these adaptation strategies and measures, because it is essential to tailor the national adaptation strategies to the specific needs of local government units and sectors. It will serve as a foundation for formulating fit-for-purpose adaptation and mitigation strategies, taking into account the unique circumstances of each local government unit. So aside from the NAP, or the National Adaptation Plan, we also have what we call the Philippines Nationally Determined Contribution. The NDC remained the cornerstone of our shared vision of limiting the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius and meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, which we signed on to. Despite our minimal contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions, the Philippines conveys a highly ambitious first NDC to the UNFCCC, or the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This was done in 2021, and we committed to a projected greenhouse gas emissions reduction and avoidance of 75% for the sectors of agriculture, waste, industry, transport, and energy, of which 2.71% and 2.71% is unconditional, meaning we pay for it ourselves, and 72.29 of the 75 is conditional. These numbers is a testament to our support to the Paris Agreement, but it's also of our recognition that enabling low carbon systems and technologies is a massive opportunity for us to modernize our sectors and avoid further contributing to global warming and climate change. The intent really of our NDCs for the Philippines climate change mitigation actions to strengthen the resilience and adaptive capacity of the country at the same time as they reduce the overall burden on the planet. It must be emphasized, though, that the NDC is a multi-decadal progressive commitment, meaning it doesn't happen over a few years. It also represents the country's aspirational investment plan in clean and climate-friendly technologies. It is GHG mitigation centric, which reflects the Philippines' adaptation requirements over time. And to fully realize the NDC, the CCC, in coordination with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources and the NDC Technical Working Group, facilitated the development of the NDC implementation plan using a bottom-up approach, focusing on sector-level actions and needs. The NDCIP outlines key actions, phasing, cost, and implementation arrangements for delivering the Philippines NDC under the identified policies and measures, or PAMs, in the transport, energy, waste, industry, and agricultural sectors. The NDCIP is based on the sector-specific mitigation action as outlined in the policies and measures. In 2023, and as agreed during the Interagency Technical Working Group meetings, the agency submitted their enhanced updated NDC PAMs, incorporating the precepts of emissions reductions or avoidance principles as an overarching goal under the mitigation framework. Now, all these plans are nice and good, but remember, we want to bring it down to the local local level. And there's a facility for that. And this is what we call the PSF, People Survival Fund. No? When RA 9729 or the Climate Change Act was amended, it became now Republic Act 10174, and the new law incorporated what we call the People Survival Fund. It's a long-term financing stream to enable the government to effectively address climate change and providing resources for that to facilitate that change. It's a fund intended for local government units and accredited local or community organizations to implement climate change adaptation projects or interventions that will better equip vulnerable communities to deal with the impacts of climate change. It supplements whatever annual appropriations are allocated by relevant government agencies. And this is where local government units can push for their own specific adaptation interventions. So there's a way that we've got the policies in place. There's also a way of funding these policies. And now, and there are, other than that, there are also other policies which the CCC is busy on. And let me just cite a few of these. And because the CCC, or the Climate Change Commission, is the lead policymaking body of the government in climate action, it also spearheads the climate change expenditure tagging. There, wala yung change. So it's that's supposed to say climate change expenditure, hindi expenditure po, sorry. Expenditure tagging. And this is born out of a joint resolution between CCC, an agreement between CCC and our Department of Budget and Management, or DBM. And here, government agencies are mandated to track their climate change expenditures in their respective budgets and its expected budget submissions using a common reporting framework or template. Here we're in CCET really tracking. Okay, if you remember, we've got gender. There's a 5% you have to allocate for so that you can pursue programs in gender. Here we're just asking all agencies in government, even local government, to say, okay, what climate change programs are you embarking on, and how much are you allocating for that? That way we can track how much are we really spending as government into processes or projects, so that we can adapt to or bring down and mitigate the effects of climate change. We're also looking into climate finance, and of course I spoke about the People's Survival Fund earlier. Really, it's just and we climate finance we define as either local, national, or transnational financing to support mitigation and adaptation actions to address climate change. So climate finance is important for mitigation because large-scale investments are required to reduce emissions, and is equally important for adaptation as financial resources are needed for sectors in government to be able to come up with programs or interventions for us to be able to adapt to the adverse effects of climate change. We're also we're accessing now what we call the Green Climate Fund and Adaptation Fund as well, and other international funds made available via our membership or being a signatory to the UNFCCC. We also do greenhouse gas inventory systems, no? By virtue of Executive Order 174, or the Philippine Greenhouse Gas Inventory Management and Reporting System. This was established to institutionalize the planning, preparation, and management of the country's greenhouse gas inventory. So we're tracking also to what extent are we producing emissions, or we producing greenhouse gas emissions, so that we also be able to track also how do we come up with mitigation programs so that we bring this down. There are other among the mandates of the Climate Change Commission also is that we're supposed to mainstream climate change. We're supposed to work with all sectors of society. We're working closely with other government agencies, Department of Education, DNR, DBM, DOF, DOH, and because it needs a whole of government, we're also working with private sector, the academe. We're doing projects, well, we're doing initiatives with different educational institutions, state universities and colleges, and other higher educational institutions. And one of the trusts of these is for us to be able to make our what we call the Communities for Resilience or Communities for Resilience program. It's really a program in the CCC to bring down to the local level and mainstream knowledge and the science of climate change, and to be able to make the citizenry, our constituencies understand that although conventional wisdom may say that it's the weather, what can you do about it? There are actually things, even as an individual, that we can do to be able to help in the fight against the adverse effects of climate change. So thank you. I'll just stop here so that we'll have more space for the questions. Thank you very much for your attention, and happy to answer questions should there be any.
Thank you very much, Attorney Cuenca, for your very holistic, very very informative presentation. There are three questions which I see on the board lined up for you. So perhaps I should call on the persons who raised this question to please. May I call on first Mr. Ben Pecson, followed by Mr. Joe Reyes, and if we have time, we have Miss Dilaw.
Okay. Yung po ngayon, yung Amerika, hindi ba some scientists are leaving the US. There's availability of many scientists, and places like the European Union have given incentives for scientists to go to their countries. I think the European Union has made possible the creation of a 500 million euro fund to attract scientists to their shores. Can we do something similar? The other question I have has to do with, are we doing R&D on methodologies, capturing energy from solar, wind, or water energy sources? And also, finally, there are available technologies na on how you can capture the energy available. Do we have ongoing means to attract investors to help make those possible? Yun lang po, tatlong questions.
I'm not sure if I can break it down in the three questions, sir, but I'll start with the technologies. Are we pursuing these technologies? Are we exploring them? Yes, to a very large extent. We are studying how we can avail, use, and implement actually these technologies on the ground. No? These are usually the energy for the production of energy primarily. We're now starting with, well, it's been a few years now that we've started with wind. There's explorations being made, and I know that our Department of Science and Technology, and even in the academic institutions themselves, they're doing research on the viability of using ocean currents to generate energy, even the flow of rivers and streams. Really, the emphasis is to shift from fossil fuel based or fossil fuel burning technologies to produce energy, and the shift towards renewable energy. So we're looking at that. We're looking at the viability and the economic viability as well. It's always easy to say, why don't we just do solar and all that and all this? But when we do solar, we're also competing with there's a lot of balancing we need to do as government And that's why we need to have our policies very well thought out. For instance, when you consider solar, you're also actually covering some land which may compete with our agricultural sector naman. So you have to balance that. So now we're also exploring and looking at the viability of why not floating solar panels in either Laguna de Bay or where, where the water is not so choppy so that you'll have more or less stable panels. So that's being done. And that's being explored. So it's not only DOSTs doing that, it's also the Department of Energy is looking at that. Even private sector is doing that on their own because, as you know, private sector naman, their reason for being is, are we able to make money out of this? So tayo naman in government, we're looking at, okay, so what are the enabling policies? What enabling policies should we have in place? What incentives can we give the private sector so that they're willing to invest? Our mantra here in CCC is, when you say, for instance, if you go renewable energy, it's not going to be very cheap, no? It's right now, while the solar panels are getting cheap, the problem naman is the storage because it's the battery. But we're hearing in the last 2-3 years, uh, storage or battery systems are now improving. The efficiencies of batteries and storage are also improving. So sometimes it's just a matter of waiting 2-3 years, and then the cost could just dive down. So a lot of things have to be considered. Is government looking at all of these and even considering the policies which would attract private sector to invest? Yes. In fact, we always tell the private sector, don't look at the money you spend on being more and more cognizant of adaptation or mitigation. Don't look at it as cost or expenses. Look at it, might be better to look at it as investments. And private sector certainly does, no? They look at what they spend on now, or the more expensive technology. They look at it as investments because later on, if they're the pioneer in the industry, they certainly have a bigger share of the market. Um, I'm not sure about the other two questions.
The points I was making, for example, it doesn't have to be batteries lang eh. For example, you could use the excess energy generated during the sunny days to compress air, which you could use later. You could use it to pump water to a higher level, which you could use later as hydroelectric water. There are proven technologies na eh. So
Yes.
there are ways we should bring in the private sector to make it easier for them, to give them whatever incentives are needed to get people to invest. And we're
Para
Your Ben
naputol
is
po.
frozen. Maybe we can, there are 3 or 4 more questions queued for Attorney Cuenca.
Sure
So
po.
with due respect to, I mean, he can come in later if
Sure.
if he's unfrozen, but perhaps I will like to call on Mr. Joe Reyes for his question. If you can make it brief, please, and straightforward. Mr. Reyes?
Yes, good morning po. Just a curious question lang kasi I'd like to know ano na yung ating progress with regard to the NDCs na, say for example yung ating pledge na 75% reduction.
Right.
How far have we gone on that? And then what are tangible examples that we can relate to the people so that kind of makes motivation for people to this is happening. Yeah, thank you po.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Right now, let me just say, right off the cuff, we're at 75%, 2.71, and the other half, conditional, unconditional. No, right. This year, we're supposed to be updating those NDC. I don't know if we're going to, and always the conventional wisdom is that the trajectory of the numbers will always go up. So I don't know if we'll stay at 75 because we really haven't, gotten a response from the 72% part of the 75, because our NDC is fashioned in such a way. Sure, it sounds high, it's 75, but we're saying actually 2.70 something of that we're going to spend on it ourselves. But the 72 point something is really contingent on the means of implementation, no? And as emanating from the Paris Agreement, which we signed on to. And what are these? We're saying for as long as you give us the capacity building or the climate finance or technology, share your technology with us, your technology transfer, we'll be able to cover the 72 point something percent. Because the Philippines, while we're the ones who suffers from the effects of climate change, we're not the ones who caused it, and it's always been the Philippine position to say the Philippines has always been very adamant in pushing our position of climate justice and the CBDR as well. It's called Common but Differentiated Responsibilities. In other words, sure, it's the problem of the whole world, climate change, but certain sectors of the world may need to do more or spend more because they've really been responsible for all the carbon in all around us, the release of the carbon into the in the atmosphere, which caused all of this greenhouse effect and the global warming in the first place. So that's where we are in terms of pushing for the in terms of the NDC. For the 2.71%, we are to a very large extent nakukuha naman po natin. In fact, I think it's if I remember correctly, medyo nalalampasan natin because we made substantial investments naman in terms of what we do for the reduction of our emissions. We're doing programs to shift into renewable energy and electric vehicles in different sectors of society. Not only in transport, but also energy, transport, even agriculture as well. I just don't have the specifics. You can certainly email me. I'm very easy to track down in the CCC, and I can get our more knowledgeable guys respond to you in more detail in terms of the NDC po. Thank you po for your question.
Thank you po.
Attorney Cuenca, 2 or 3 more questions. May I
Sure.
call on Mr. Cabellion, followed by Dr. Al Serafica and Ms. Dilao? Please.
Sir, I enjoyed your talk. This is Dr. Cabellion from Maryland. Now, the question is, there's the challenge of funding. And I see your graphic pictures with the typhoon and the dry land and the heat. Which of these two weather systems kills more Filipinos so you can focus the funding that you're going to help the Filipinos?
Sir, thank you, Dr. Cabellion, for your question. In terms of what we have domestically, in the Philippines, what we call the People's Survival Fund, what we do is not really in focusing on the body count. It's more like and we're focusing more on the adaptation aspects of the twin pillars in the fight against climate change. And why is that? The Philippines is it's not much of an emitter. We're like 0.04% global emissions. So what does that mean? Even if we reduce by half all of our greenhouse gas emissions, it won't really matter globally because we're not producing so much. So what do? We're still feeling the effects of climate change. Then we go to the adaptation part because that's where it has more impact for us. Funding, therefore, was more focused on adaptation interventions. And what are these? And the funding we have right now, or the People's Survival Fund, for example, is specifically designed so that only local government units are able to access it. Meaning the smaller municipalities out in Samar or where the Tacloban or the latest Samar corridor or the ones in Bicol or the eastern seaboard where most of the typhoons hit. And that's where we're helping them. We're looking at their local climate and disaster risks, RVAs, risks and vulnerability assessments. We're looking at their land use plans. We're looking at their climate data, and so that they can come up on their own with their own adaptation interventions. And they may have already something going on. The People Survival Fund can act as a supplemental fund so that if what they have in terms of the pipeline of projects will only bring them to the business as usual level, the People's Survival Fund can come in and say, you know what, here's a, X amount. You make it more resilient. It will, instead of right now, your project is, I don't want to call it developmental ordinary, but it's business as usual. It's the usual developmental projects with the youth by accessing the People's Survival Fund. You may be able to make your business as usual developmental project now more resilient. It's able to withstand, if before it's able to withstand a 10-year cycle flood, perhaps now it's a 50, 100-year cycle flood they'll be able to withstand because of the augmentation coming from the People's Survival Fund. It's not much, and in fact, it's not like we haven't had any problems in terms of access for the local government units. We have to span the technical capacities of local government units to come up with their proposals. And that's a problem we're trying to address. And we're working very closely with the leadership in the Department of Finance, who chairs and is where the PSF Secretariat is lodged. And I think we're making headway because for the longest time, since it was established in 2012, we've only, for the first 1 billion pesos, we've only been able to approve about 30% of the original amount. But now we've surpassed finally more than 1 billion, and we're close. And this year we expect to hit another billion. So it's slowly, gaining momentum. There's the initial inertia, and people are trying to get their familiarize themselves of how to come up with a proposal which is compliant with the regulations set by the law, so that they can have more adaptation interventions and able to adapt more to serve their community. It's not perfect. We're trying to make it better. We're trying to improve it, but it's a start.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cabello.
Thank you, Attorney Cuenca. Can we hear now from Dr. Al Serafica?
Hello, thank you, Edna, for acknowledging. Very nice presentation, Attorney Cuenca. One quick question. We just discussed this, actually, the National Academy meeting yesterday with one of the prominent people doing seaweed, mangrove. And I've always asked the question about had we had any experience in claiming for carbon credits for carbon sequestration using mangrove plantation, similar to what I read about some few months ago or a few years ago in Seychelles, or I think maybe one of the islands down in the Indian Ocean, if I remember correctly. Do we have a model now here, say for Leyte, when you do because there's always been a question about planting the wrong species that doesn't actually grow. And I remember Jurgen Primavera mentioning that if we were to look at the outcome of that initial fund, the utilization for planting, we actually didn't achieve what we wanted to do in terms of survival rates for those mangrove that will actually mitigate the flooding and the sea surge that is common in the typhoon belt that you mentioned, Leyte, Samar, and Bicol. Do we have that model? Because part of that, I work also with the League of Corporate Foundation, having been part of PAASE as chairman last year, to see how we can form these transdisciplinary teams. I was with Mahar Lagmay in Taiwan 2 weeks ago, and we were admiring their what do you call this? They look like jackstones, but boulders of jackstones to actually break water so that their erosion is minimized in their coastal region in the south facing Batanes. But those are the kinds of activities that I don't mind kind of supporting and asking for money from the foundations, but do we have a mechanism to kind of offset some of the expenditures using the carbon credit or the green fund or whatever is available from the CCC finance arsenal in order to make it more viable, worth funding? Matching funds is always a good thing, even for us in DOST's private cradle program where we have industry and academe doing the research together, but there's a
Yeah.
cost share. I also work with USAID for manufacturing.
Sure.
It's the same case. So do we have such a model that has been implemented as part of your work at the CCC? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Serapika. First off, lest people think that it's the CCC who controls the People's Survival Fund, hindi po. We're just one of 9 votes in the board. Kasama po dyan si DOF, DBM, PCW for make sure the gender aspects of any proposal is taken care of. DILG, kasama po natin. NEDA even for the planning. And there are 3 sectoral representatives, one for academe, one for civil society organizations, and one for the business sector. Kasama niyo po sa NAS, si Dr. Rex Cruz used to sit in the board as representing the academe. So send my very warm regards kindly.
Yeah, he's actually been elected to the executive committee of NASTA to replace.
Wonderful.
I
I
think
always I always tell him
Raul Pavella.
when he sends CCC as an invite, my default answer is always no, kahit na always yes, kahit na no, kasi meron na akong na-Oan iba, but we rearrange things. So he's always been very supported. Also a member of the National Panel of Technical Experts, the first batch. Carbon credits, this is we're really studying that. No, we can't say we're prepared yet, but let me just say it. I think the policy direction, even in our advice given to the legislator, the Congress, no, they're also trying to put together the law on carbon credits and the regulation of those um, uh, um, instruments. The policy direction is that I think it's DNR who will be leading it, but also because it deals with financial transactions, it's the Department of Finance will also have to weigh in very heavily. Insofar as the CCC, we're mandate-wise, our role here is to bring in all these different agencies together because we're supposed to coordinate, collaborate, and make sure it's a collaboration among the different agencies in government so that we can come up with the most well thought out policy, whether it just be at the start, it can be a CCC resolution, or we're actually in the last Congress, we were sitting down very, very closely and working in the TWGs of the House of Representatives. And there's a whole bunch of young legislators there who's into climate change, very into the science as well. And I can't say anymore. Ubus bilib ko sa kanila. Ang sisipag din. Naubusan lang naubusan lang ng oras, so to speak. I think they're going to take it up again this Congress because practically about 75% of them are back again, and chances are they're going to be in the same committee. So, quick answer, carbon credits, tinitingnan na po natin yan as government. Most likely DNR will lead together with DOF. Certainly CCC is there to do the donkey work where needed. Para naman, kasi ang nakikita din natin, a lot of investors are very bullish about buying into these carbon credits. But one thing we noticed, and of course, let me just say, this is my personal opinion. This in no way reflects the position of the CCC, etc., etc., etc. It's a lawyer in me talking, but ang nakikita ko that the pattern I'm seeing is those buyers of the huge chunks of carbon credits are buying into jurisdictions which are really not very sophisticated yet. Wala pang rules, wala pang ano. So sabi ko, that seems to be the pattern. You've got a lot of huge chunks in Africa being bought for their carbon credits, peatland somewhere else. And if you look at these jurisdictions, walang regulatory system to police those carbon credits. So they don't know what's happening. To me, I think they don't know what's going on. They just see the offer. It's substantial amount of money, certainly. And they take it. To me, they're probably selling too soon because they don't know the real value. And I know there's been a number of laws already which have been enacted in recent years, which mandates the accounting of our ecosystem and the resources we have. And I think it's a good idea. If you look at all these laws together, we'll be able to say, You're only offering us that. We're number one in biodiversity. We're huge carbon sink. There must be something to why certain developed countries and business interests in those developed countries are in a rush to buy carbon credits everywhere. But we're saying, teka lang, allow us to study, and when we're ready, then we're ready. But right now, not yet. We don't have the policies for it because we're right smack in the middle of studying this. It's not just government. We're certainly consulting the academe. We're consulting the scientists. Make sure it's a whole of society thing. It's not just the CCC's problem to deal with the effects of climate change. It's not just the government's problem. Sectoral, societal. So academe, private sector, NGOs, lahat po kayo. When we update our NDC, when we send out the invitations, kindly attend. We'll consult you. Call us out. If we're not doing our job, we're happy to look where you point. That's not to assure you that we'll do what you want us to do, but at least we'll consider what you're saying. So, dyan po. That's carbon credits. All the others, ano pa ba yun, sir?
Green Fund or COP28 fund that's being deposited in ADB, all of these available funding mechanisms.
Meron po.
I've heard of, but I've not seen actual, for lack of a better, operation. Unlike USAID, because I had a USAID running for 9 years, 10 years, about $35 million was downloaded to the Philippines for development. Strive.
Iba po kasi yung iba yung funding which is coursed through development partners, meaning for the US, that's USAID, for the German, that's GIZ, for the UN system, that's UNDP and all its UN system, smaller agencies. Iba-iba po. Iba rin yung actual funds being set up. The Green Climate Fund, for instance, we've actually been able to now access 2-3 projects na. And there's more in the pipeline. In fact, we called them out. The Philippines called out the Green Climate Fund. Kasi isa tayo sa instrument. We're one of the first pioneering members of the Green Climate Fund. Sinabihan natin yung Green Climate Fund. Ano ba kayo? Gusto nyo bang ma-access yung fund? Kasi ang daming hoops, hurdles, and challenges bago maka-access eh. Although, we have to say, Vietnam has accessed the Green Climate Fund more than us, which means we also have to put our act together. Adaptation Fund, finally, I think we're accessing it. We've been aware of it for so many years, but right now I think we're able to access it already. May at least one project na. So these are all funds all over the place, international and based on our agreements under the UNFCCC. Nagsisimula na po tayo, medyo diesel lang sa arangkada. Pero diesel pag akyatan, di naman tayo mabibitin later on, I hope. We won't lose naman momentum.
Sorry, mahilig ako sa Porsche, kailangan mabilis. Thank you.
Okay, I think there's one related question on finance. Ms. Dila, would you want to still raise your question? Is she still here with us? Wala na ho yata. Okay, with that, I think we have very substantive, very thorough discussion for today coming from Dr. Emma Porio and of course from CCC Attorney Rommel Cuenca. Very rich discussion, and I hope that this sets the ground for our two upcoming sessions still on climate change on June 6 and June 13. On behalf of the PAASE, I think the president is right here, and I'd like to give the last word for her to give the last word. But on behalf of today's session, I'd like to thank our two resource persons, Dr. Emma Porio and Attorney Rommel Cuenca. President Gladys, would you like to say something before we issue the certificate of appreciation to Attorney Cuenca?
Okay.
She's still here with us.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to Attorney Rommel Cuenca and to Dr. Porio for giving very informative and talks. So as Dr. Edna Ko mentioned, this is just the first leg. Indeed, the first leg gave us, a very good introduction about the policy responses and impacts in programs here in the Philippines. So we will have another 2 sessions about climate change, and I hope you can also join us during this next 2 sessions, so that you can actually contribute more and can give your perspectives from the other speakers. PAASE is always willing to host seminars, webinars that are very impactful and very relevant here in our country. So I would like to congratulate Ma'am Edna Ko and Menchi Lagman for organizing this. Thank you very much for your connections, and you were able to invite 2 very busy people, Dr. Porio and Atty. Rommel Cuenca. Again, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, giving the opportunity to present all what you've been working on. Mabuhay po ang CCC, at sana po madami pang proposals na matanggap at funding. And in relation to that question dun po sa chat box, is it for the families or are these for researchers, the funds that you have mentioned during your talk?
Yes, the funds po and that's the law saying, the funds are specifically for local government units po and local community organizations.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ma'am Edna. Again, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, President Gladys. May we now read out our certificate of participation of attendance for certificate of appreciation for Attorney Cuenca. And may I also announce that there is going to be an evaluation by everyone on the conduct of this first in three forum series activity. Here is the certificate of appreciation. This is presented to Attorney Rommel Antonio Cuenca for being our speaker at the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, or PAASE Climate Change Webinar Series, Leg 1, on policy responses, impacts, and programs held on May 30, 2025. Presented this day, May 30, 2025, with our deepest gratitude, signed Dr. Gladys Cheris Completo, the President of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. Sir, our certificate of appreciation and our heartfelt gratitude for your presence and for sharing. Same goes to Dr. Emma Porio. Thank you very much,
Maraming
Dr.
salamat
Emma,
po.
Attorney Cuenca.
Maraming
And
salamat po.
wag ho sana kayong madadala. We want more of you.
Anytime po,
This is the
anytime.
evaluation link.
Anytime po. Thank you very much.
Anytime, Edna.
Thank you very much.
See you sometime very soon.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Congratulations. That was learned a lot from Attorney Cuenca and from the questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is all the time we have. We made use optimally of our time with our resource persons and with the questions raised from the floor. So we will have a part 2 of climate change discussion. This you see on the screen are some of the upcoming events on climate change in the series. So you have that with Dr. Raymond Tan, with Dr. Malyari, and the other one is Jerry Alaxa. For the what session is this? That's Friday, June 6th. So we hope to see you there. And thank you very much, everyone, and have a good day. Bye for now.
Why, thank you, Ma'am Edna. Congratulations. Ang galing po. Ang ganda ng session.
Salamat. Bye-bye.
Bye.